Okay. So let's talk about rest for injuries. So, well, actually, we just got done with a rant of some doctors, not every doctor, but a lot of times doctors will say that, oh, you just need to rest for 4 weeks for your shoulder pain, for your knee pain, for your foot pain, whatever. Rest, maybe take some anti-inflammatories, and then in 4 weeks we'll see you again, see how you're doing. Sometimes it works. Most of the time it does not. So I wanted to talk about, is rest the best thing for injuries? Does it depend on the injury? The answer is yes. It definitely depends on the injury.
Always depends.
And then if your injury does actually truly require some rest of that area, is there anything that can be done to help either speed the healing up or make that area or your body more resilient to it happening again within that period of rest?
Loaded question as always. And as always, my answer is, it depends. I will say with 100% certainty that if the only treatment option you are given is rest, you should probably find a different clinician.
Yeah.
Because rest, while it may mean don't do the thing that irritated the thing that you're here for, it also doesn't mean do nothing. Rest simply means just let's chill on what irritated it for now. There are so many other things that we can do within that relative rest, and that's why I like relative rest much better, because if you're doing nothing, you're not really facilitating healing.
Yeah.
For example, we had somebody who got a pin in a bone for a fracture a couple weeks ago, and I told them right afterwards, hey, get in here so we can start using laser therapy to stimulate different organs on your body that are going to help remove the bad fluid and stimulate the bone healing, such as the thymus and hypothalamus, so that you're going to get that stimulation of the calcium release and
was it your thyroid, parathyroid?
Yeah, thyroid, parathyroid, to get the body to dump all the things in there that it needs to. Blood flow restriction helps with bone healing, even though that fresh surgery, and we're not going to stick a needle in a fresh surgery, that's ludicrous. That's asking for an infection and a problem and everything else. But just because we can't touch that because it's in a cast, it doesn't mean there aren't tons of other things we can do to address the physiology of the body to give the best environment for healing.
Yeah.
And that's where the term relative rest really comes in, especially, if you're talking about like a baseball player and not wanting to lose that dynamic visual acuity of seeing different pitches and reacting to different stimulus. We've got dynamic visual acuity training things here to help keep the brain active in that area so that you don't have such a hard time going back into the sport once you return. So relative rest is always the answer, but strict rest of don't do anything is never the answer.
Yeah.
Because if you got the problem in an active state, like we've talked about on a couple of these videos now, you have to use some sort of an active state to return to that and recover from that.
Yeah.
There are certainly different ways to load and stress that tissue. We talk about the horseman laws all the time. There's 5 horsemen. We've got Hebb's law, Hilton's law, Davis's law, Wolff's law, and then the SAID principle that kind of lumps all of them together. Those are the 5 horsemen that really truly describe everything we do from a movement standpoint and movement as medicine. Hebb's law, neurons that fire together, wire together. Hilton's law, we've got the ability to address a problem along any point of the nerve root. Wolff's Law is build stronger bone by stressing bone. Davis's Law is the same for soft tissue. So in order to build stronger soft tissue, you need to stress the soft tissue. And then the SAID principle is specific adaptations to imposed or implied demands, depending on what you read, is the description of how do we get the tissue to adapt to that, or how do we get the nervous system to adapt to that. So when talking about injury, if you're not employing one or all 5 of those horseman laws to the biochemistry, physics, biophysics, whatever you want to call it, of the body, you're not going to ever achieve the best results possible.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And I like the term relative rest. I don't know if I've ever heard of the term relative rest before, but yeah, it's one of those things where, if you have to be immobilized for a certain amount of time, you got to spend some time in a walking boot, a cast, a sling, whatever, whether that's from a fresh injury, a fracture, or a past surgery. Like, despite you having to spend a couple weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is, immobilized and stuff, there are things you can do to speed the process up of what your body is already doing to heal it. So, and you mentioned them before, laser, red light, BFR. Depending on what the issue is, you can definitely load other tissues as well. You can do things to make sure you're not losing the sharpness of your nervous system with like the visual acuity training and all that sort of stuff. So it's like if you're an athlete and wanting to be a high-performing individual and you get an injury, just because you have an injury doesn't mean that there's not any like extra work that can be done to make you better. But a lot of times people don't know that.
And the traditional medical model, most physicians and providers will tell you, you need to rest. Well, it's not an all or none principle, and shouldn't be considered an all or none principle, because the body still needs some sort of stimulus in order to heal the best. But their answer is always, we'll just stop doing everything. And that's, again, where we differ from a lot of other clinicians of, okay, well, we're going to stop doing the thing that hurt the thing in the first place, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we can do. Just because the hand and arm can't do hand and arm things doesn't mean that the eyes shouldn't still continue to do eye things, the shoulders continue to do shoulder things,
the core continues to do core things, the
hips,
legs,
like
all that good stuff.
All of the stuff still needs to be able to do the things that they do, even though this is like, if you've ever been to an amusement park and like one ride is out of commission, that doesn't mean that the entire park is closed. So the rest of the function still has to be going, and the nervous system is very much one of those things, if you don't use it, you lose it. And the less you decondition during that relative rest period, the better off you're going to be coming back.
Yeah, and it's insane because there is research out there about this, but just speaking from a anecdotal point of view, every single kid that's had an injury or a surgery that has come in here ASAP to get working on things, every single one of those kids have gotten so much better outcomes than the kids that we get late. And I mean, man, it's insane. Like, I think of some of the ACLs that we've rehabbed in here, or just any knee, like multi-ligament surgery or whatever. The kids that get in here sooner are doing great. Like, literally at like the 6-week mark, like quads are back to the same size, like their muscle activation is great, they're walking without a limp, all these things. And then there'll be times where we'll get a kid like 12 weeks or 6 months down the road from an ACL, and they walk in and it's like they don't have full extension, their quad's still small, they're still walking with a limp. And then not that we can't fix that, but it's really freaking hard.
Yeah, really, really hard
to get it better if you haven't taken the time to get those first like couple weeks with your body taken care of. So
Yep. I mean, we've got a multi-ligament reconstruction right now that was told, 9 to 12 months before you're cleared, and he nailed every one of our clearing tests.
And that is a super tough
100%
situation because it's like
on
he
the
looks
first go at 6 months.
he looks really freaking good. The only sucky thing is like with all the ligaments that were repaired and the grafts and stuff, like
It legitimately takes that amount of time to
we
heal.
still have to protect him, and it still takes time to heal those ligaments. But it's like from an overall function standpoint in a controlled environment, he's freaking kicking butt.
Yeah.
He's doing really freaking good.
And I'm running out of excuses on how to.
Yeah, it's like how do
Hold him out.
Like literally the only thing we have to hold this kid back is just be like, listen, physiologically for all those graft sites to heal, it takes X amount of time. But literally other than that, you like are moving better than probably 90% of the kids on
Yep.
your baseball team that are actively playing.
Right. Yep.
But it's because he busted his rear end and came in day after surgery and came in 3-4 times a week for the first 2 weeks.
I think his first BFR session was 19 hours after surgery.
And it wasn't even like it wasn't even, and I think people get scared too because it's like, oh, well, I just had surgery and the doc said I can't move it or do this. So like, why would I go to an athletic trainer or a physical therapist or whatever? Like if I can't move it, it's like, well, I was like, for the first week or so, it was literally all about just managing his lymphatics and managing swelling. And guess what? Shocker. When you manage swelling effectively, muscle activation comes back way quicker. Range of motion comes back way quicker. Like, did we passively crank on the knee and stretch it to the limit that the doc wanted it within those weeks? Like, no.
Never.
We never did.
Never once
we
stretched
just
it.
managed lymphatics, did BFR, facilitated good muscle activation, and helped use all of the tools we have here to stimulate his body and cells to do the things they're already doing, just faster. But his outcomes will be different than any other kid that had the same surgery that waited 2-6 weeks to get into any therapy. Just the way it is.
Yep.
So
He's got a buddy at school that had the same surgery. The injuries were a week apart. Surgery ended up being 2 months later on the other one because it takes that long sometimes when care is not managed the way it needs to be.
that's another thing we're
And-
very spoiled with. We have great docs that we can refer to that do really good work and that we trust and that they also trust us. That is a huge piece. But yeah, it's
Cool.
It's crazy.
Yep.